And, I mean, I'll skip over Boston here for a second because we already spoke on them. Let me now go to the New York Mets and all the excitement that was going into this year. Young manager Carlos Beltran, former player with the team and former really good player in the MLB. I'm not sure if he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm really not sure now because of this. But he was a good player during his time in the league. When he was on the Astros, he was well over his prime. He didn't really do much to contribute with that team on the field, but he was still a part of the team nonetheless. And remember, Scott, he was one of those guys that was on a lot of team radars as a potential next young great manager in the game. Remember, when Aaron Boone was hired as the manager of the Yankees, he finished as the runner-up to Aaron Boone. He came very close to becoming the manager of the New York Yankees. So it's a very unfortunate situation that's happening there with the Mets. It's unfortunate what's happening with Boston. And, of course, it's unfortunate what's happening with Houston. But, you know, Scott, I find it funny right now. And you being based out of Detroit, you know exactly where I'm about to go with this once I say it.
Right.
Justin Verlander is a guy who has been a staunch advocate for years against guys that he feels have cheated the game, did something against the integrity of the game, could have hurt the game in any way. We haven't heard a peep from Justin Verlander since this whole thing unraveled.
True. Yeah, we haven't. I guess he's trying to choose his words carefully before he responds to a situation that he's not only close to, but a part of, even though I don't believe he had anything to do with it. But now, obviously, he's in think mode. And, you know, again, that could affect whether he stays with the Astros in the long term.
Well, that's an excellent point. I mean, not even because of the fact that even if he chooses to do that, I believe one of the questions we have to ask when it comes to a guy like that is, how much does he really have left in the tank? I know he had a great season last year. I know he was the Cy Young winner in the American League last year, but he's getting up there in age now. He's closer to 40 than he is 30, and he's a pitcher. And we've seen this on multiple occasions. Guys come out and have an outstanding season. The next year, they just fall off of a cliff. And he somewhat fell off of a cliff at some point when he was in Detroit before having his last hoorah, basically, with the Tigers that convinced the Astros to trade for him in the first place.
Well, he had injury problems.
Yes.
That's, I don't know.
He had injury problems. He had injury problems, especially with his back problem. But there was a stint there towards the end of his tenure with Detroit where he started to somewhat look like his old self again.
Right.
The 2011 Justin Verlander, who won not only the American League Cy Young, but also won the Most Valuable Player Award in the American League that year. So he somewhat started to look like that again. But that's one of the biggest things that I would watch out for to come into this season is just how he's going to look out there on the mound. And is he going to start showing more signs of his age? Because, yes, he won the Cy Young last year, but he gave up more long balls than we're used to him giving up to, Scott.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Garrett Cole's no longer with the Astros, so there's going to be more pressure on Verlander and other pitchers to step up when you lose a horse like Cole. And, yeah, I'll give you the credit, Father Time. Nobody beats Father Time. So, as a result, can Justin be getting closer to that? Probably. But I don't think he's really worried about it. I really, really don't. Because he's won a World Series now. He's established his ability as a first-ballot Hall of Famer. And that's what we're losing sight of. You know, he has Cy Youngs. He's got no hitters. He has a World Championship ring. He's done it all. Now all he's doing is probably cashing in on the coin. Plays in a state where there's no state income tax. So, you know, as long as he's effective and they're competitive, you never know where he's going to land. But for him, paydays are really what's in it and whatever accomplishments he can have on the field. But Justin Verlander's had a fine career. He really has. And I mean, I think his decision will definitely be a lot more clarified after 2020. I mean, how bad will the Astros fall off? Who will their manager be? If they start to fall toward the 500 mark, or maybe just above it, and they're not competing for the postseason, does he finally get tired and realize that his days are numbered, or does he maybe decide to hit free agency for one last shot? What teams would be interested in him?
There definitely will be a team out there who more than likely will give him a shot at it, just simply because of his name and the cachet that comes with that. Anyway, unless he just completely, like I said, comes out here and he basically falls off the cliff. Now, I don't see that happening that way, but I also don't believe he's going to be as dominant as he was a year ago. Garrett Cole's departure has a lot to do with me saying that as well. But, you brought up the manager situation, and I think it's very interesting because you have many older managers, respected guys in the game who are up for candidacy for that job right now. Some of the names that came out were Dusty Baker and Buck Showalter and great guys like that. But I'm curious to see if the Astros go that way or if they make another hire within the organization. I believe they're in a position, though, Scott. I believe they're in a position where they actually have to go hire from the outside in. Because with everything that's now taking place with the sign-stealing scandal situation, can you really trust them to hire somebody from within? Can you trust that team will be playing clean baseball? And even if you hire someone from the outside, you're going to have others looking at them sideways anyway, like, yeah, we don't really know about these guys. Like, are they really as great as we think they are? You're going to have people who are going to question that anyway. But if you hire somebody from within, it's another questionable move. And I don't think Jim Crane's going to do that. The guy who I honestly think will be their next manager is Dusty Baker.
Do you?
That's who I believe they're going to hire.
Okay. Well, I mean, I agree. An experienced manager that gives you a calming influence is the way to go. I don't know what they have in their organization. And I think they need someone that'll be a calming influence that has been a winner. I think Dusty Baker was given a raw deal with the Washington Nationals, and Buck Showalter had the Baltimore Orioles competitive before he had that bad season to wrap up his tenure there. I don't think you could go wrong with either of those two guys. And don't forget that Buck Showalter built the Arizona Diamondbacks from scratch, only for Bob Brenly to get the jewelry. So
yeah,
I don't think you can go wrong either way.
Let me bring up another point about Dusty Baker too, Scott. He's also a guy who's had to deal with controversy before. He was not the manager of the Giants at the time when the steroid speculation and the steroids accusations came out about Barry Bonds, but he was the manager of the team the year that Barry Bonds just absolutely went crazy and hit 73 home runs. So, of course, those questions were being posed over to him, too, when those accusations came out, even though he was with another clubhouse at the time. But, hey, did you know this was going on? Or did you speculate something like this was going on? So he was wrapped up in the middle of that situation, too, even though he wasn't directly connected to it anymore at that time. But he's a guy who's had to deal with some controversy before, too. And I just believe, like you said, I mean, he's a good driving force. And Buck Showalter would be, too. Either way, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those hires. Buck Showalter honestly wasn't a bad manager in Baltimore. People are going to look at what happened his last year there. Listen, that team was falling off the rails. Manny Machado, they ended up trading Manny Machado. He wasn't necessarily viewed as the best clubhouse guy anymore. Adam Jones completely he wasn't that all-star caliber player that he was anymore. And just everything just fell apart there. And, you know, we see now that it was a lot more than just Buck Showalter, but we knew he was going to get fired for that season, too. But, you know, we see just how awful the Orioles were last year, and I'm not so sure how much more we can anticipate that they'll be better this year. But he's a great manager, and Dusty Baker's a great manager, and either one of them will be great hires for the Houston Astros, and I believe they would be perfect candidates to also come in and help guide that team through this time, because every city they go to this year, they're going to hear it.
Yeah, we agree on that. I guess the curiosity that I really have beyond the Astros situation is, who do you think the Red Sox are going to hire?
That's an interesting situation, because it's now more than just the Alex Cora situation. They're still dealing with the Mookie Betts trade speculations as well. As a matter of fact, the news came out yesterday that the San Diego Padres are working to try to trade for Mookie Betts. So I would much rather be in the situation of the New York Mets and even the Houston Astros right now than Boston, because that team went from winning 108 games to completely falling off the rails last year to having a superstar player who won MVP for you, who now, I don't know if it's the case that he doesn't want to be a Red Sox anymore, or if they don't want to pay him. I don't know what it is, but there's no excuse to me why, after accomplishing everything they did in 2018, why they didn't get that long-term deal with him done, at least for 5 or 6 years. If they didn't want to go 10 to 11 to 12 years, I get that. I'm against those long deals like that anyway. I still believe the Phillies will pay immensely for paying Bryce Harper that, and I don't believe Manny Machado will be everything he's supposed to be for the Padres either.
Well, here's what you have. The Boston Red Sox are not in any hurry to find Cora's replacement, and the general manager has gone on record saying that. And now, with spring training just around the corner, there are some, people wondering what's going to happen. Well, you know what? You got to remember, there's a team that's been a big spender. They let Dave Dombrowski go, and the farm system is gutted out, so I don't think they know what the right fit is for their situation. Are they going to be competing for a championship, or are they going to be trending toward a rebuild? So I think that's what the general manager has going on right now. I actually think the two top teams in that division are the New York Yankees and the Tampa Bay Rays. The Boston Red Sox, better days are behind them, unfortunately. So that's a very interesting situation to see how the managerial situation plays out. As for Mookie Betts, you know what? San Diego is definitely trying to become contenders again, and they've spent before, and they have a relatively new ballpark. They're trying to put bodies in the stands. They haven't won in many, many years, and they've tried, but they haven't been able to quite succeed in that area. So, they're very, very, very interesting dynamics, no matter how you look in each and every one of these things, Xavier. They really are. And, again, I want to reiterate my position here. The Boston Red Sox have been around the luxury tax threshold for a long time. They've got a few world championships in the John Henry era as owner. When you have them, and then you don't feel like the drought's as long, and you're not as desperate, as is the case with the Cubs. And Joe Madden will be always remembered as a man that broke that long drought. Theo Epstein as well. So now you're in a position where, we don't have this hanging over our head anymore. So I think that impacts organizations more than we want to even believe in it. But again, Mookie Betts, could he end up with Philadelphia? Sure. If the Phillies want to break the bank on him and Bryce Harper, I wouldn't want to have to face that lineup with those two guys in there. Definitely not. One hitter protects the other, Xavier. And as a result, they'll see better pitches.
And it's not only that either, Scott. If you said that to me a year ago, I probably would have whiffed at it. But it's the fact that they hired Joe Girardi as their manager. Yeah, I wouldn't want to face that either, because that's another guy. And, this is the point on this that nobody's really discussed either, Scott. And I'm going to go a little in depth on this.
Okay.
The Astros basically, because of this cheating and because of the sign stealing and because of the banging the bat on the trash can, this basically caused Joe Girardi his job with the Yankees. Because the Yankees were up in that series. And, I'm not making excuses here for the Yankees falling apart in the series and, them not being able to complete the deal and get